to the east. Welcome to this webinar on supply chain sustainability for the ski and tourism industries, what you need to know. And thank you for those of you on the line for your persistence in getting in. I know we had some technical difficulties. That's because New York City, area code 646, numbers are down. So if you are chatting, you can see that there's a new number that you can dial in to have audio access to today's webinar. All the same, despite the technical difficulties, we have an amazing lineup for today, and we are really pleased to see the great level of participation. We have people from ski areas across the country, including Canada, and a really great mix between ski areas and supplier members. My name is Judy Dorsey, and I'll be your webinar moderator today. And today we'll be hearing from 6 speakers, 2 trade associations, 2 ski areas, and 2 suppliers. First up, we'll have Geraldine Link talking with us from NSAA about the kind of public policy drivers for sustainable supply chain from the viewpoints of sustainable slopes and the climate challenge. Then we'll hear from 2 ski areas. We'll hear from Vail Resorts, Anita Weiss, Vice President of Procurement from Vail Resorts, and Ross Freeman, the Environment and Sustainability Manager from Stevens Pass. And a number of ski areas asked us, does supply chain sustainability cover everything we do, anything we might procure in terms of goods and services? And the answer is absolutely yes. And while Vail and Stevens Pass are doing a number of great things in sustainability more broadly, they're going to share with you what they're doing in supply chain. And because it's such a broad topic area, they've kind of divided and conquered the subject such that Anita will share with you what they're doing working with their vendors and suppliers around the more capital-intensive aspects of snowmaking and lifts, etc., while Ross will focus in on retail, food services, and other general procurement practices. So the idea there is to hear some of the driving forces from ski areas leading the way, and then to hear from 2 suppliers also working to lead the way in supply chain sustainability. First, we'll hear from Doug Freeman, the Vice President of Global Supply Chain and Product Development from Patagonia, and then from Jeff Wilson, the Vice President of Sustainability for Quicksilver. And you'll come to hear that in supply chain product development, apparel is an area of probably leading the way in terms of supply chain sustainability, and hence we have 2 apparel suppliers representing us today. Doug is going to focus in on Patagonia and what they've been doing specifically, and then Jeff is going to try and translate from what they're doing to sort of the role of the supplier in advancing the effort in collaborations with other suppliers through the trade association lens and some of the efforts and progress there, which will be a great segue into our final panelist, Beth Jensen, the Director of Corporate Responsibility for Outdoor Industry Association, where she'll kind of close it up, kind of bookending our efforts today with the 2 trade associations, the Ski Area Association and then Outdoor Industries Association, to show what is happening from a coordination and collaboration standpoint on that end. We've had some really great discussion getting to know each other and preparing for today's webinar, and likewise we hope you find this helpful and informative. So to that end, there are some logistics that we want to share with our attendees. We'll go through the 6 presentation materials rather quickly with our goal to be done in the first hour so that we can have an open online discussion for the last 30 minutes. And to support that, as you're seeing the presentations and hearing the presentations and you have questions that you would like to ask the speakers, please send your questions in the chat box, which should be in the right-hand side of your screen. And my colleague and coworker Seth will be monitoring and collecting your questions so that when we get to that moderated discussion, we can really have a good dialogue about what is happening both from the supplier viewpoint, the ski area viewpoint, and how we can collaborate together. Also, early next week, we'll be sending a follow-up feedback questionnaire and an email to get your feedback. We'll also be providing a link to receive where you can access copies of the presentations from today, as well as if you're so inclined, a recording of today's webinar should you find that this is useful and you want to share the information with others in your organization that weren't able to attend. So, and there are the beautiful people that you will be hearing from, but I don't get to see in person today. So just a couple of opening remarks on how we got here today to this webinar. Brendle Group is an engineering consulting company focused on sustainability, and we've been working in the ski industry on sustainability for over a decade, both for NSAA and direct to ski areas on a range of sustainability issues and topics. And so we're always monitoring sustainability trends in the broader market and looking for relevant applications to the ski industry. A case in point, sustainable supply chain management is a very hot and burgeoning space in the broader sustainability movement that brings us here today. And so for those of you new to the topic, just wanted to kind of orient ourselves to the same line of thinking. Supply chain simply refers to the life cycle management of product manufacturing. And if you're looking at the bottom of the screen, from product manufacturing, from raw materials, manufacturing and processing, packaging, transportation, and storage, through to distribution and sales, consumer use, and end life. So supply chain is managing really those first four elements with a transition out through the remaining two. As you might imagine then, for each of those steps, from raw material extraction to packaging and distribution, there are economic, social, and environmental implications with every decision along the way, and hence the attention that product manufacturers have been placing on incorporating sustainability into their supply chain management. When you then think about how that might apply to ski area operations, and we look at this familiar scene of base area operations as an example, you start to appreciate the complexity of applying sustainability tools and processes to each of those 6 arrows at the bottom of the screen for the thousands of products in these main areas of ski area operations, from snowmaking and grooming to building maintenance, planning, design, and construction, fleets, and so on. And while we've seen ski areas maturing over the last decade in their corporate sustainability efforts, supply chain is still a relatively new frontier compared to the significant progress that ski areas are making in terms of direct improvements in their on-mountain operations. So it's a logical extension as the sustainability performance of ski areas matures that those expectations would be pushed downstream into their suppliers. So we decided to convene this group of leaders to share their stories and to share with us progress to date. And our hope is twofold. First is to help increase the awareness and understanding of both ski areas and ski suppliers about this topic, and beyond that to hopefully also motivate action. So while we thought that was a pretty good idea, we decided that we should see if others were interested. So we conducted a survey this summer of National Ski Area Association supplier members as just a starting point. And just very briefly, you can see here the results in terms of, we asked the question, how familiar are you with trends in sustainability in the supply chain? And roughly half are somewhat familiar, a quarter very familiar, extensively familiar, and maybe another quarter where it's just coming onto their radar in terms of familiarity. And then you can see likewise the level of actual steps being taken by suppliers to incorporate sustainability into their product development practices kind of mirrors that. An additional question we asked is, okay, would you be interested in a webinar to learn more? And 77% of those interviewed said yes, and so hence here we are today starting that dialogue among suppliers and ski areas about supply chain sustainability. And while from a ski area's standpoint, we hope that you'll come to understand and appreciate, as you hear from the suppliers, the parallel drivers around the triple bottom line of sustainability, that there are environmental benefits to be derived from the decisions you make and how you procure products and services. Really, as we've talked among ourselves, and you'll hear in the speakers, a lot of opportunities surrounding cost efficiencies and managing risks. And then the social side of sustainability, there's embedded labor issues as well as opportunities around community building. So hopefully you'll see some good extensions between what you're already doing and how to extend that out to your supply chain. So what steps you can take, whether for everybody here in the audience today, whether you're a supplier or a ski area, is first to recognize and commit that it is important to not only manage your own inputs, but also those of the vendors and suppliers with which you do business, to set some expectations to those you do business with, both customers and vendors, measure and reward success and collaborate together and help build capacity on that front. So with that kind of orienting background, we're going to now hear from our speakers, and I need to do a technical check to see if Geraldine's been able to join us.
I don't think the other one is still.
Okay. So we have all of our speakers minus Geraldine, so she did ask us to go ahead without her and sends her regrets. And what I can say for Geraldine, since we prepared together, is that the National Skier Association, through Sustainable Slopes, really sustainable supply chain crosses a number of topics surrounding the environmental charter and the principles in that charter. So we highlight here just some of those points of connection from waste reduction as well as areas around purchasing, adopting green purchasing practices, requesting vendors to take back used products and waste reduction plans, etc. So while Sustainable Slopes, which by the way this environmental charter was minted in 1999, didn't explicitly call out this new buzz term, sustainable supply chain, it absolutely infuses it across the principles of Sustainable Slopes. Similarly, while Sustainable Slopes has been around for quite a while, the climate challenge is now in its second year, and for those ski areas that are part of the challenge, they've committed to measuring their greenhouse gas emissions, setting a target, a reduction target, and implementing at least one new project per year. And for those that are doing greenhouse gas accounting, we all know that Scope 3 emissions are voluntary, and they start to look at some of those upstream embodied emissions from that you don't otherwise directly emit yourself. And so this ski boot that you can see around goods and services is an opportunity to start working with suppliers around their greenhouse gas emissions as part of the climate challenge. So there's a policy link there, if you will. All right, well, I'm sorry that you guys didn't get to hear from Geraldine directly. I can confirm that we do have the rest of our speakers online, and we've done a sound check. So with that, I'm going to transition it to our two ski area speakers. And as I mentioned, Anita Weiss from Vail is going to go first, followed by Ross Freeman. And what we asked them to really focus on in their presentations is, to what extent they're using procurement guidelines. What do they look like? Are they building their own or using third-party tools? Are they considering carbon emissions or other metrics for driving supply chain sustainability? The extent that they're mandating versus suggesting and partnering with their suppliers, and overall how this looks in terms of their relationships with their suppliers, partnering, communications, and capacity building. So with that, I am going to shift to the presentation by Anita.
Good morning, everybody. I am Anita Weiss, as she mentioned, Vice President of Procurement at Vail Resorts. Real quickly, I wanted to talk a little bit about the background for procurement at Vail Resorts, just to set the stage. If you can advance to the next slide, please. Procurement at Vail really is only about 5 years old. We formed our formal organization in 2007 and started leveraging some spend, getting some quick wins. Now we're really looking at it and evolving our vision for procurement and incorporating sustainability, really looking at assessing our risk, collaborating a lot more with our operations and with our suppliers, and using our spend leverage from our 7 resorts to challenge and push our suppliers in areas of innovation. So from an alignment perspective, the core values at Vail Resorts are serve others, be safe, have fun, drive value, do good, and do right. And sustainability is at the core of each of those values. But from a sustainable procurement vision, that means taking into account economical, environmental, and social impacts in our buying choices, which includes things like optimizing price and quantity, availability, those type of things. But it also impacts the social aspects that are linked to our products and services. So looking at the guiding principles that we use as we're selecting our suppliers, all the things that they were just talking about come into play. When we're setting out a bid or doing a formal RFP, we have a set of standard sustainability questions that we're now asking our suppliers. A couple of examples about those. One, have you measured and taken steps to reduce your corporate greenhouse gas emissions? Have you set public available water use targets? Have you established publicly available sustainability purchasing guidelines for your direct suppliers and address issues such as environmental compliance, employment practices, and product safety? And also from the social perspective, do you invest in community development activities in the markets that you source from or operate from within? So as we are putting out our set of questions, and there's about 30 questions that we generally are asking, we are using those questions in our evaluation process. So in looking at the areas above, you can see that sustainability, of course, makes a lot of sense, right, from the environmental and social perspective. But what Judy spoke of just a few minutes ago, we're finding very true time after time. It makes good economic sense as well in addressing our operating costs associated with the life of the assets that we put in place. So to dive a little bit deeper on the topic of sustainable infrastructure, for us, infrastructure, and the same for everyone, we're really looking at our facilities, our fleets, our lifts. And from a current infrastructure perspective, we're working with best management practice teams or across our 7 resorts, looking at things like our inventory, assessing critical failure parts, obsolete parts, what potential do we have to work with our suppliers for vendor-managed inventory, looking at our standardization of our repair and maintenance schedules. Are we doing too much maintenance? Are we doing too little? And then from a logistics perspective, looking across things like our grooming patterns and efficiencies there to moving food across the mountains or trash off the mountains. So really wanting to understand that impact from our current infrastructure. Then as we're assessing and looking at future infrastructure, that's more traditionally where you'd see procurement involvement is, what is our procurement process? How are we taking into account all of the things that are important from a sustainability perspective? And establishing and tracking that total cost of ownership for the assets, so looking at new and better ways to operate the mountains. A few particular or specific projects to give you a feel for, how we're getting to the meat of the infrastructure work. Under the area of innovation, we're partnering, and I'm sure everyone is doing this to some degree, but we're sitting down with Doppelmayr and Leitner Palma, the lift manufacturers, to look at our infrastructure. Of particular concern for us, and maybe a lot of you on the phone, is your aging detachable lifts, specifically those that are built in the early 1980s, where they're nearing what was originally thought to be end of life, but no one wants to rip out a lift and put in a new one. The cost is just too high. We're going lift by lift and talking with them about what is it going to take to keep that lift running for the next 8 to 10 years, extend that life as much as 20 years would be ideal. So how do we work with them to manage their production cycles, especially for the long lead items that are now taking upwards of 18 months to produce? What inventory strategies should we put in place to maintain our uptime requirements, those kind of things? We have to work, we know we have to work with those manufacturers to ensure that the lifts remain operational. We help them manage their costs and therefore pass along those savings to us. Also, fleet is a big deal for us. As I mentioned on the earlier slide, we're exploring things like GPS technology to optimize those grooming pattern efficiencies. Certainly is a key driver to reduce our diesel usage, which right, is good for the environment, but it's also significant savings to the bottom line. In the area of snowmaking, we're running multiple systems across the entire enterprise. It seems everyone has at least one, in some resorts two, different snowmaking systems. So we're working to really understand and standardize our specifications to drive efficiencies in that procurement process and to maximize our energy efficiencies. And then key to supporting all of these projects is technology enablement. We're at different stages of implementing an inventory system, a maintenance work order system, and really trying to standardize to one procurement system so that we have visibility and we can track what we're trying to accomplish. So, as with all ski areas, sustainability is really important to Vail Resorts. And for many years, our operations staff have focused on projects like the recycling, reducing energy and fuel. But now we're trying to take that to the next level, working back in our supply chain to ensure that the suppliers that we partner and work with share the same values and collaborate with us to drive innovation to support our sustainable values.
Thank you, Anita. That was a really great overview, and hopefully now is a good time for our audience, if you have particular questions for Anita, to start typing those in for Seth, and we'll capture those. And then while I'm transitioning to our next, I also understand that Geraldine was able to join the line. So Geraldine, is there anything that you might like to add to the discussion since we skipped over you?
Thank you. I'm so glad to be on here. I've been trying, hanging up and redialing. I was on another number, and I was talking away, but you guys couldn't hear me. So I just wanted to thank Brendle Group, the ski area panelists, the supplier members, all the panelists for participating in this really important panel. And I don't want to kind of interrupt the flow here, but I think Judy did a good job of covering the context and how we've been at this for a long time in terms of addressing this topic. It started with the charter back in 2000, and it's evolved over time to a revised charter and then into the climate challenge as well. And I just wanted to say, I think we've come a long way. We've seen some great Golden Eagle Award applications on greening the supply chain, and I hope to see more in the future. And I just wanted to note, too, that there will be a session at our Eastern winter meeting at Mount Snow in early February, and the Brendle Group will be leading that session on this very topic because it's one that, we think this renewed emphasis on it is very worthwhile and will hopefully spur action in the future. And so I will just say that, and then let's keep it rolling.
Great. Thank you so much, Geraldine. That's really helpful. All right. Ross, are you ready?
I am. Let's just do a mic check and see if this sounds okay.
You sound good.
Okay. Well, thanks. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity here. I will be trying to address the sustainability issues at a smaller resort. Just to give you a little context on where I'm coming from. We're a day-use resort. We don't have lodging. We have 10 lifts, about 1,800 feet vertical. We've got about 1,100 acres on 2 different mountains, and we see just under 400,000 visits a year. So just to give you a little orientation as to where we're coming from, and then we can move on to the next slide there. So it turns out that because we're close to Metro Seattle, our guests are generally fairly informed about environmental issues and do expect a certain level of achievement. From our surveys, 2/3 know that we have some kind of environmental program underway, and 1/3 say that it influences to some degree their decision to come visit us, instead of a couple of other day-use resorts that are about the same drive from the Metro Seattle area. With that said, as a smaller resort, we do have some limitations that will probably sound familiar to many. One of the most significant is we don't have a central purchasing office right now, and I'm a one-man department, so everything I do is implemented through other staff, and there is the issue of how to navigate that process. In particular, thinking about the total cost of ownership and the disposal cost, I find particularly challenging in getting staff to think about that kind of those end-of-life costs. It's not the way that some of the older, more established operational frontline staff have looked at life. But we also are enjoying some notoriety, if you like, around the Western Washington area, and we are being approached by vendors who want to be associated with our green program. We can move on to the next slide. Okay. So we also use essentially a triple bottom line process. It's underway. It's still evolving. We've chosen to populate that with the components that make the most sense for us right now, and some of those will look quite familiar. Of course, because I'm working with a pretty limited budget and a very small program, I'm looking for ways to really leverage opportunities to maximize the dollars that I do have, and to, if you like, piggyback onto something that the vendor or the supplier might already be doing. The way I can extend my dollar. I would just point out in particular that the take-back programs are of particular note for us, because that's a way for me to get a lot of mileage. Move on then to the next slide. So in terms of measurement, we're doing a lot of tracking by internal processes and departments reporting to me. I am now publishing an annual sustainability report on our website. And I just point out, probably like many of you are experiencing, a number of the initiatives we have are revenue negative, but they may be ones that are very popular with the public, and I can underwrite those with other initiatives that are earning money through sales of surplus material, selling recycling, or by energy savings and other measures. So it all comes out as a net gain in the end. But I have to be creative. We're not yet quantifying all of the Scope 3 emissions of the vendor supply chains. That's an arena that we may be a little too small to go fully down that avenue yet. And we don't have the resources to audit suppliers at this point. So we are relying on discussions with them, informal kind of assessment of their philosophy, and looking at certifications when those are present. Next slide. So maybe to put it all into focus here, then how do I do what I do at a small resort? These are really the 6 or 7 ways that I go at it. As I mentioned before, I'm searching out ways to make the most of existing partnerships. And for example, Coca-Cola comes up to our remote resort. We're on a state highway way out in the mountains. We're at the end of the line. And I talked them into taking back a bunch of our plastic film, for example, that we can't recycle with our local recycler, but it goes back to the Coke warehouse where they have lots of that material. Just a simple way of working with them. They're willing to do it. It's out of their usual domain, but they thought it was a great win-win. Same thing for getting vendors to revisit processes that have fallen by the wayside. Many of our distributors are supposed to take their shipping pallets back, but again, being the end of the line, end of the day, often the drivers didn't want to deal with it. So talking to their sustainability managers on their end and getting them to make sure that they were following their own policies. I spent a lot of time looking for opportunities to piggyback onto other well-funded departments within Stevens Pass. So, I can get a lot of mileage by joining into communications from HR, being part of products that come out of marketing, and working with sales and reservation on the guest interaction side. Those are all avenues where I, as one person, can really amplify my message. Quite often, we're serving as a pilot or a demonstration project with regional vendors that want to try to push the envelope a bit and see if they can do what they do up in our remote and difficult setting. So that's the case in point with our very successful food waste compost program, where I spent the whole summer essentially persuading the compost hauler that it was worth the opportunity that they had to work with us to come way outside their usual terrain and about 40 miles beyond their service area, and work with us on a food waste capture program in a mountain setting. And it's been really successful, and they have learned a great deal from it. Just to wrap up on this piece, we also make sure that the partners we do work with, we have aligned philosophies. And I have to say, at a number of the green conferences that I've been to in the region, I have met quite a few different vendors at those that have become partners of ours. And it's a great place to find people that have similar perspectives. Just for example, a lot of our high-efficiency lighting upgrades that we're doing now came from a contact there. And so you know right off the bat that you do have some alignment. Maybe in summary, just for the way I do things, it's a lot of diplomacy and cajoling and repetition and figuring out the way into each part of the operation here. We do still have a few, I would say, old guard staff that might not be really on the bandwagon, and so I have to find ways to work with them. Next slide. Just a little bit of detail here before I wrap up. On the food and beverage end, there's ways to maximize these partnerships so that it can kind of be a win-win. We just a quick example: we sourced a regional cooking oil for all of our food and beverage operations. We were prior to that getting oil from the southeast, had to get shipped all the way across the country. So we found a local oil. Has a slightly higher cost, but it turns out it has a longer lifespan in the fryers. And it includes free collection by a local renewable biodiesel producer who collects it once a season in huge vacuum trucks powered by biodiesel. It's just an incredible full circle, and I love telling that story to guests because they really get excited about it. And the same deal with the compost program I mentioned earlier. It took us about a year to get all the details worked out so that all of our disposables were switched to the appropriate product. And they really helped us navigate that process to the point now where we have composting in all the kitchens, all the table service venues, and about 80% of our restaurants. And this is all for the same cost as traditional landfill, but going to a much better end use. And boy, if any of our programs that are more public-facing, this is by far the most popular initiative I have. The guests that we have love this program, and probably twice a week all winter I get guest comments on how great it is and how much pent-up angst there was about throwing away their food. We just never realized. And finally, we do every year look at our F&B menu list and assess our most popular items and look for ways to bring those within a 200-mile radius so that we're using local suppliers just to minimize the transportation impacts, improve freshness. It's gone very well. Real quick into the rental retail side, when we did upgrade to a different tracking system, we chose a version that would allow us to make almost all resort transactions digital and saving us thousands of pounds of paper a year and reducing paper use in rentals by 2/3 just in that venue. And finally, when we're in negotiations, and Anita covered this a little bit on the bigger capital side, but when we are looking at upgrading the snowcat fleet or working on energy upgrades, we're looking to work with vendors that have take-back programs and that the new machines might be leased instead of purchased, so we have an ongoing take-back relationship. And we find ways to maximize that opportunity. just looking at challenges to wrap up here. Accountability of staff is a challenge. Again, the introduction, Judy mentioned kind of the formal versus informal, or kind of mandate versus voluntary. And since none of the implementers of my programs work directly for me, I have to be creative about getting compliance. And then there's proprietary systems that we run into where we're kind of trapped into an existing paradigm. The paper napkin dispensers, the paper towel machines that are battery operated are everywhere, or unusual, unique light bulbs that they all force us to work forever with a particular supplier. So I'm sensitive to those. Oh, I don't know what that was. A little noise there. And then excessive retail packaging and IT packaging of electronics are the really challenging arena for us, where I don't quite have enough influence as a smaller resort to get those things changed right away. And that'll wrap up this slide. I'm just finished there with our mission. You can see why we're doing what we do. It is the people, planet, profit approach. And I'll just have my contact info there for your future use. Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Ross. Well, we are now going to shift to supplier perspectives, but as we transition, I again want to thank Anita and Ross. It was really interesting to see both the centralized approach and the decentralized approach, and the successes that you're both experiencing in your procurement so far. And as we move to the supplier perspective as compared to the ski area perspective, some of the things we challenged our next two speakers to think about and share with us are the extent to which what they're doing is externally motivated by their customer versus internally motivated by the business case benefits and other drivers, as well as help us understand how they make sense of the alphabet soup of labels and certifications and pretty dynamic space in terms of supply chain sustainability from the product side. So with that, we will turn it over to Doug Freeman from Patagonia. Looks like he might be muted, and we're giving a check to that.
Okay. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you, and we really appreciate the interest in Patagonia and the supply chain sustainability program here. And go to the next slide. The first thing to know about Patagonia is that, everyone here, almost to a man, believes that Earth's in just irreparable environmental crisis. And, our mission statement, to make the best product, cause no unnecessary harm, and use our business to inspire and implement solutions to the environmental crisis, is really everyone's, call, and certainly our mission. And all of the business sustainability efforts, if not even our sales level strategies, kind of emanate from this mission statement. I think if some of you are rock climbers, you might remember that the company's origins and roots are in Chenard equipment. When Yvonne was making pitons, he realized, and really his first lesson in that our business pretty much pollutes is when he saw the pitons scarring up the rock. When he'd get done with the climb in the summertime and come back after a winter season, the water and ice freezing and thawing cycles would really damage the big walls that he was climbing in Yosemite, the Alps, and here in the Andes that you're looking at on this slide. And that was really his first inkling that everything that he does and the company, by extension, does is polluting. And so the mission statement arose out of that. Let's go to the next slide. So our company is a values-based organization, much in the same way as Anita described. We feel that when we treat our people, both here within the Patagonia company as well as in the suppliers that we manage, creating fair, safe, humane working conditions for our suppliers. When we have environmental programs such as Blue Sign, when we use organic cotton or recycled content fabrics, when we treat our supply chain and our product in a way that promotes the environment, and we combine that with responsible business practices, common threads, recycling product from beginning to end, 1% for the planet, which gives 1% of our net revenue each year away to grassroots environmental causes. The Footprint Chronicles, which is part of our website that promotes a totally transparent picture to Patagonia's supply chain, where products are made, the carbon footprint of them, and where we see opportunities for continuous improvement. Part of that is our responsible business practice. And when we combine all of those things, from people to planet to responsible business, great product is developed through that kind of Zen approach to things. For this fall 13 season, if any of you work with our reps, you're going to see our merino base layer program sourced from wool in Chile, in the Patagonia region, and that wool is coming from sheep who are raised on sustainable grasslands. So, throughout Patagonia's history, and if we go to the next slide, you'll see kind of a continuous evolution of environmental initiatives that we've developed in an effort to clean up our act. Again, going back to the thought that everything we do pollutes, we need to do more and more to offset that impact. 1% for the planet in 1985. In 1993, we started using PCR fleece. An interesting note about that is that in 1993, we were among the first to do that. Recycling soda pop bottles, which is pictured here, and working with Malden Mills at the time, now Polartec, to develop PCR fleece. Now, the U.S. government is using entirely 100% all PCR fleece in their products. So that's kind of starting a trend here at Patagonia to use the business to inspire other people, in this case the government, to get on this environmental movement and really reduce the amount of impact we all have. In 1995, we decided to reduce our packaging footprint of Kathleen underwear that you see here. We simply roll it up at the factory, put basically a postcard-sized hang tag on it, and put a rubber band and call it good. And that got us away from intensive plastic and cardboard and everything else, and made a real simple presentation. Organic cotton, which we use 100% of in all of our sportswear product. Unlike other companies, we don't blend it or step on it. The full thing there, and we follow that up with Blue Sign, which is a Swiss organization that's created a sustainable way to dye and finish textiles. And we're moving to 100% Blue Sign compliance by 2014, and we feel really confident that that's the best way to get our arms around restricted substances, to use a minimum amount of water, and to really produce all of our fabrics in the most responsible way possible. Common threads. You might remember an ad that we ran on Black Friday of last year. The Friday after Thanksgiving, biggest shopping day of the year, we ran a full-page ad in the New York Times that said, don't buy this jacket. If you don't need it, don't use it. And that's a message that we're really being aggressive with this year in terms of educating our customers to reduce their consumption, to repair what they don't, what Patagonia products are broken, and to reuse through a program that we've set up with eBay to move those old Patagonia jackets that they no longer need or want to other people that do. So, you know, some, I think, rather unique stuff there. And then that last icon is our Footprint Chronicles, where we really are transparent with all the sustainability practices that we have. And I think more than bragging about their unique aspects is a very healthy discussion on the Footprint Chronicles that tells people what we're not doing and what we are very worried about within our supply chain. A good example of that is DWR finishes, durable water repellent finishes on the outside of the fabric of all the ski wear that we make, and everyone else uses as well. Those are very harmful. The PFOA content is very harmful to the environment, and we're working like demons to come up with an alternative solution. So Footprint Chronicles really speaking to not only what we do, but how we can get better. So if we move to the next slide. You know, like Anita talked about at Vail, the important thing for us is to embed our core values in all the supply chain decisions that we make. You know, so we have sourcing managers and material sourcing people who, you know, scour the landscape for the best factories and the best fabrics. We have, you know, a social responsibility team that audits not only our factories making our sewn products, but also the raw material suppliers producing the fabrics. We have a quality department that ensures, you know, new suppliers and existing factories can build to the Patagonia quality ethic. And then we have environmental responsibility, where we want to ensure that our supply chain partners aren't polluting. You know, we want to get under the hoods of those partners to understand what their environmental practices are, what they do with their wastewater, what they do with their energy use, their scrap fabric. We have a rather robust audit tool for both environmental responsibility, quality, and social responsibility that we use to evaluate our suppliers. And then the business side comes up with the best possible combination of price, minimum, lead time, and capacity, really, so that we can deliver on time. And all four of those things are given equal weight. This is in contrast to other companies who might, not to pick on any of the, you know, any of our competitors, but if you go out to the, you know, standard 7th Avenue company, you're going to find the business aspects to that equation take precedent, and that social responsibility and quality is followed up later on after the decision to engage with the supplier is made. But in our case, all four of those people have an equal say, and they work as a team to evaluate existing suppliers as well as new ones, so that, you know, if social responsibility has a negative audit, or if they don't feel comfortable around that supplier's CSR practices, they'll stop that supplier in its tracks. And we've passed on some rather notable factories because we haven't felt comfortable around one or more of those four aspects. So if we go to the next slide. The Fair Labor Association is an organization that we helped found back in 1999. And there's a lot going on here with this slide. I won't read through all of it. But this gives you an idea of the level to which we go to ensure that our supply chain is meeting its obligations. We go to great lengths, and again, not only in the product supply chain, but also in raw materials, to ensure that each supplier has a code of conduct, and that integrated that code of conduct into their management of labor. That the workers in our supply chain have a confidential grievance mechanism. There's accountability. There's constant monitoring, either by the FLA, third parties, or our own staff. That we communicate, you know, our commitment to this to our suppliers. We're actively managing and analyzing audit data, you know, so that we can timely remediate all the issues that we find. And we find issues, you know, pretty consistently, and it's a effort of continuous improvement to make sure all of these things are taken account of and addressed. Responsible purchasing practices, you know, thankfully it's become less so now, but a few years back we weren't the best at delivering on time. And when you really put the squeeze on a factory that's running late, all sorts of bad environmental and social things occur. Those late orders have to be air freighted. Often capacity has to be added. Overtime ensues. When the factories are pushing that hard, they may not be treating their workers as fairly and as safely and as humanely as we'd like. So we really have a responsibility in the business end to ensure that there's enough capacity in the supply chain to handle our growth and that the planning of that business is spot on. So, you know, a lot to that, but this slide really meant to give you an idea of what's involved with the Fair Labor Association and the extent to which we go with both product suppliers and fabric suppliers. And go on to the next slide. And to wrap up, you know, when you go back to the mission statement and you read the part where we want to use, you know, the Patagonia model to inspire solutions to the environmental crisis, and you look at this picture of Yvonne talking to Walmart. In 2008, we helped convince Walmart to create the Sustainable Apparel Coalition. Beth, who will speak last, knows this very well. We've worked really closely with her and the OIA to create an index that manufacturers can follow to measure their impact and to reduce their impact. And as most of you probably know, Walmart's a leader in this area. Whether it's the salmon fishing industry, whether it's compact fluorescent light bulbs, whether it's their use of organic cotton, and they're the largest consumers of organic cotton in the world. We feel a great deal of pride, and if Yvonne were here, he would tell you one of his proudest moments in business is convincing Walmart to take this track and elevate it even further. So when, you know, little Patagonia at $545 million is influencing a $500 billion company in Walmart, and that's a big moment for us, and we're quite proud of that. So that kind of ties in the mission statement, you know, into what we're doing, and that would give you an overview of the sustainable supply chain efforts here at Patagonia.
Great. Thank you, Doug. Really interesting. Very helpful. So just wanted to let the audience know if you have any particular questions from Doug's presentation, you can chat those to us. And we have some from the other speakers coming in. And we're going to transition now to our second supplier, Jeff Wilson from Quicksilver.
Thank you.
Take it away, Jeff.
Yep. Thanks, Judy, and hello, everyone. First off, a big thanks to NSAA and Brendle for conceiving and hosting this webinar, and I'm really pleased to be a part of it. And for all of you participating, listening in, my one goal is at the end of this presentation that there's at least one kind of action item nugget that you can actually take away and use in your work world. So that's my goal. A little bit of full disclosure here that I have to cop to is Quicksilver is not nearly as progressed down the sustainable supply chain path as Doug and Patagonia are. We're relative newcomers to this piece of our sustainable journey, and we're certainly in debt to Patagonia and a few other leaders, you know, who for providing much of the early thought leadership and heavy lifting that's been done, and Doug's presentation highlighted that tremendously, so big kudos to them. And so with that, my comments today will reflect in large part really a more general sense of how we're thinking about sustainable supply chain management and trying to approach it, and a few important early lessons that I learned along the way that will hopefully assist you guys in furthering your supply chain work. You know, with that data that Brendle supplied earlier, you know, indicates that the majority of you are in the not at all to somewhat familiar range along this path. So I think we're kind of kindred spirits there, so hopefully there's some things that resonate with you here. So moving on to the next slide, please. So I think it's always good to get grounded on why you should even care and be committed about this, and I think Judy shared some of that earlier. But to me, the absolute unequivocal fundamental driver on why you should care and commit is the addition of 2 billion people to our planet in less than half a lifetime, 38 years by 2040. Most of you probably have a sense of what the impacts of that growth could well be. The simple truth is we just have to get smarter and more efficient in our industrial systems. The take-make-waste model will not work any longer, and we have to take another direction. And the other truth of the matter is, from what I see here, we are not at this point being driven by consumers, by retail customers, or investors to do this. Most recent research indicates to me that people just expect product manufacturers to do no harm, or socially or environmentally. It's almost like an implicit expectation. So the responsibility and the accountability rests with us. It rests with business to make this happen now, and that's what we're trying to do. And with the next slide, so what are some of the key lessons that I've learned so far along this fairly brief journey? I think probably the most important, and Doug referenced it, in product manufacturing enterprises, the human and environmental impacts are upstream, what can be referred to as cradle to gate, raw material feedstocks all the way through to factory assembly and packaging. And that's not to say that the downstream chain impacts are not worthy of attention and improvement. They certainly are. It's just that certainly in our industry, and I think most, what we've found is the meaningful impacts are in that upstream chain. So what I've learned from that is my focus in here is product, product, product. Design, merchandising, sourcing, production, our product development people, the upstream supply chain. And from my reading in the whole space, it's becoming pretty apparent that that's what most consumer product goods companies are now beginning to realize. Certainly Walmart and in conjunction with Patagonia there has certainly found this, and is also a leader. So lesson number one, and into the next slide. One of the other really important lessons is just how large that upstream supply chains are now largely overseas and distant, mostly in Asia, with the preponderance in China. They're mostly third-party contracted and subcontracted and sub-subcontracted. They're complex, opaque, culturally influenced, and oftentimes lacking in rigorous governmental oversight. So what that means is supply chains they're really hard to get your arms around. I mean, they're just hard to get arms around and obtain much, if any, degree of transparency about what's going on. So what I've learned from that, the simple reality is that that's just where we are right now. That's what we have to deal with. And our focus is to get better. It's to work both internally and externally to help demystify, deconstruct, and simplify our supply chains to generate greater transparency and efficiencies along with it. So with the next slide, please. What I've also found along the journey is that environmental impacts, specifically, I'm going to leave the social aside for a moment, are exceptionally challenging to quantify, and the science behind them is really taxing. Trade-offs are abundant. You always have to be on the lookout for the laws of unintended consequences. You might think of ethanol here. And I've learned that you just have to be informed and educated. You've got to take the time. And you can't be subject to fad, emotion, or perception. Be cautious, constructively skeptical, and do your homework to ensure that you're getting the best science behind your decision making, in particular life cycle type analysis. And with the following slide, please. With all of that, it's needless to say, supply chains can be just flat out intimidating and overwhelming, and therefore next to impossible for any one company, Quicksilver, Patagonia, I think to a certain extent, even a Walmart, to really deconstruct and transform an industry supply chain. It takes a village, strength in numbers, and that's the final learning I'll leave with you guys. And that village for me was to move 2 years ago to join the Outdoor Industry Association's Sustainability Working Group, a collaborative 250-plus companies with passionate and committed professionals representing the really very best in sustainability thought leadership, all working together to reduce social and environmental impacts in our shared supply chains. And I'll leave it to Beth Jensen with the OIA, who heads up that work, who is following me, to convince you of this wisdom and share some of the successes. But I have to say, just personally, professionally, I've been absolutely blown away at how much I've learned in the past 2 years and how much progress I've made with my sustainability and supply chain work here at Quicksilver, thanks to the Sustainability Working Group. I'm a huge, huge advocate. And in my closing slide, yes, sorry you guys, I had to include a surf shot. We are Quicksilver after all. My final observation is begin to ask tougher questions of your suppliers, and yes, that includes us. Anita referenced that, and looks like they're building 30-plus odd questions into their procurement process, and that's terrific. But whoever they are, whatever your perception of them, regardless of the length of your relationship with them. And like I think I've tried to highlight here, be especially curious about their upstream supply chains, in particular Tier 2 and beyond suppliers, the subcontractors to final assembly supplier, and their subcontractors and their subcontractors. And this is particularly, I think, where the shared knowledge and information in an industry collaborative can really, really help. It drives you towards the right questions to ask of your suppliers, and it drives you to the right answers to look for. So thanks for listening again. Hopefully, I said there's a meaningful takeaway in there for you that you can put to practical use, and I look forward to your questions at the end. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Jeff, you really characterized well some of the points I was trying to make earlier about some of that newness to a pretty complex space with a lot of information, and you really helped tee up our next speaker very nicely, because both you and Doug referenced the importance and value of your companies surrounding your partnerships to advance your supply chains. So with that, let's transition to our final speaker, Beth Jensen from OIA. Okay, can everybody hear me all right? Does that sound okay? Okay, great. Sounds good. Perfect. So being the last of these speakers, I'll try to keep this as concise as possible, but as mentioned, I'm the Director of Corporate Responsibility for Outdoor Industry Association, and thanks to Jeff and Doug for teeing up the work of the Outdoor Industry Association Sustainability Working Group. Both those organizations, Quicksilver and Patagonia, have been two real leaders in the sustainability work that we do within the Outdoor Industry Association, and I'll talk a bit more about this, but we invite folks from both within and beyond the outdoor industry to participate throughout the supply chain, brands, retailers, raw material suppliers, and any other stakeholders who are interested. So if you want to move on to the first slide, I just wanted to, similar to Jeff's presentation, just tee up a bit of why this work was begun in the outdoor industry, and it was really a member-driven initiative about 5 years ago or so. Several leading companies in our industry got together. Actually, one of the first meetings was held at our outdoor industry, or the Outdoor Retailer Trade Show in January of 2007, and they really got together and said, hey, you know what, there are a number of things swirling around here. We need to all get on the same page as an industry about what the issues are and how to address them. So a couple of things that were sort of swirling at the time, if you want to go on to the next slide. One of them is a number of companies were undertaking environmental footprinting exercises. This is just a representative example from GoLite, a company in our industry. But this is pretty representative of what a lot of companies were seeing across the industry and looking at the data and finding that, you know what, materials and the manufacturing process of product is really accounting for around 2/3 of the overall environmental impact of our company, and this was not a unique finding that GoLite found here. So that indicated that, you know, product sustainability specifically and supply chain, looking at the supply chain was really should be the priority for the industry in terms of our collective sustainability efforts. I'm going to go on to the next slide. Another thing that, another piece that plays into this, if you want to build this slide out, this is just a representative example as well of the REI Half Dome tent, which is a pretty flagship product for them, and the number of supplier nodes that are involved in that product. So if you look at this chart, that's 80 different supplier nodes
approximately 80 different supplier nodes that are involved in just the production of that one tent. And again, you know, depending on the product and the complexity of the product, that's not uncommon to have even more supplier nodes than that. It just shows the complexity of the supply chain of outdoor products today. So, and the next slide just is talking about the number of different labeling schemes that were appearing as well, and a number of different leading organizations in our industry, including Patagonia and Timberland, as well as GoLite, were in the process of developing their own internal rating systems for product sustainability. Timberland developed their Green Index, GoLite had their GoLite Index. Patagonia's Footprint Chronicles has been a real leader in this effort for quite some time as well. So really starting to try to look at traceability throughout their supply chain and understanding what, you know, what makes a product more sustainable than another. And again, these guys kind of were three of the leaders in talking about this internally within the industry at the time and saying, you know what does a 4 out of 5 on GoLite scale mean versus a 4.5 out of 10 on the Green Index versus, you know, what do these different things mean, and how can we actually know and have an apples-to-apples comparison of what makes a product sustainable, and make sure that we're looking at the same criteria within our companies. Next slide, please. And then the other piece is just at a more macro level, we really view this beyond just sustainability. I think as an industry, there are a number of other factors that come into it and drivers for this work. Resource scarcity and you know, ensuring that your supply chains are running most effectively and efficiently as they can be, and this just shows, you know, obviously our dependence on oil and water scarcity and all these macro issues that are coming into play here, and ensuring that our companies are able to most efficiently and effectively succeed and continue producing product in the wake of these different macro concerns. So on the next slide, you'll see just a quick overview of Outdoor Industry Association. We're 1,300 member companies right now, brands, retailers, and suppliers. And for us, a supplier means something a bit different than in the ski area industry, I think. We look at suppliers really as raw material suppliers, or, you know, cut and sew facilities, or those types of factories that then supply product to our brands and retailers. And then we have a number of associate members as well, service providers and the like. We're based in Boulder, and corporate responsibility, the department that I lead, is one of our 4 key pillars within Outdoor Industry Association, and it is really a board-driven priority for the association. So if you want to move on to the next slide, you'll see an overview of our sustainability working group work. And again, thanks to Jeff with Quicksilver and to Doug with Patagonia for the plug on that. It's really a groundbreaking collaborative group of over 250 different companies that are focused on improving supply chain and product sustainability efforts within the industry. And again, looking at both environmental and social considerations. And you'll see our sort of mission statement there for the sustainability working group. Yeah, and it's really a groundbreaking pre-competitive collaborative effort. You've got Quicksilver and Patagonia and Timberland and REI and all the other companies in our industry really sitting in a room. Burton and K2 are 2 other ski area folks that are heavily involved in the efforts as well. Everybody's sitting on weekly calls and putting in sweat equity to develop the tools and resources that are needed to really make a substantial improvement collectively in the industry. So I'm going to move on to the next slide. Real quickly, you'll see our sustainability working group, and sorry, the text got shrunk a bit there, I think, in the transition to the slides, but we have 4 key areas underneath our sustainability working group efforts. We've got the index work, and that's a partnership now with the Sustainable Apparel Coalition that Doug mentioned. And that's developing indexes for apparel, footwear, and equipment, looking at product level sustainability. We've got a chemicals management working group looking at chemicals management considerations throughout the supply chain. We've got a materials traceability working group that's focused on looking at different materials that are commonly used in the outdoor industry, so down and wool and organic cotton, and trying to improve the traceability processes around that. And then our social responsibility working group that looks at fair labor considerations within the supply chain. So continuing on, a bit more about the Sustainability Working Group, you'll see the current voting membership of the group, and you'll see it's really a who's who of the industry that's involved in these efforts. And again, it's really driven fully by this membership, and the sweat equity of these folks is going into producing all of these different tools and resources, and getting the industry on the same page with what the the most important considerations are, and addressing those collectively in a pre-competitive collective way. So I'll just sit there on the slide for a minute so you can see all the participants. Okay, and moving on. So we have a couple of other partners as well that we work closely with. Again, as Doug mentioned, the Sustainable Apparel Coalition, specifically with the index efforts, the sustainability indexing efforts. A few other folks you'll see here. The United States Environmental Protection Agency has been specifically involved in our chemicals management working group. The European Outdoor Group is sort of our counterpart over in Europe, and we partner with them quite closely as well. Sustainable Fashion Business Consortium, based over in Hong Kong, has a number of supplier members. Again, that's sort of what we would consider the factories and the raw material and cut and sew type of suppliers. Over in Asia, they're a great link over to that community, and a few other partners here. And I just wanted to cover real quickly on the next slide the index work. So just a bit more high-level information about the index. It's now called the Higg Index, and it's based really on three main components. So back in 2007, really the Sustainability Working Group founded around a flagship project being the Eco Index, and developing this common product level index to benchmark and measure the sustainability of outdoor products, so apparel, footwear, and equipment. The Sustainable Apparel Coalition, when they formed, as Doug referenced, I guess they officially formed about 1.5 years ago, leveraged that, adopted the OAA's Eco Index, along with a bunch of work that's been done by Nike around sustainability of specific material types, and a ton of data that they've collected in that area, as well as the Global Social Compliance Program structure that they've been using for their environmental facilities assessments in terms of a level 1, level 2, level 3 type of assortment of indicators. And combine all these three pieces into what's now known as the Higg Index. And I've included the link there below to the public link for the first version of the index, of the Higg Index. We're going to have a pilot program for the footwear module, the equipment module, and the social and fair labor module of the index coming up within the next several months as well. A more sophisticated online tool is being developed for the index right now. Currently, the one that you'll see at that link is really just in Excel format right now. So we're really excited that we're developing a more easier to use web-based tool, and so that will be piloted once that's ready in the next couple of months. So we're working hard on that index development work as well. And next slide. Yes, and then just another quick overview of exactly what the Higg Index measures. So again, you're looking at the entire life cycle of product, from raw materials down to all the way over to end of life. And so there are different indicators within each of those areas. And then looking at these different lenses or areas of impact, like water and energy use and greenhouse gas emissions and waste and all these other issues, as well as, again, the social and fair labor module that we piloted within the next couple of months here. And so, as you can see, it's really the most robust product-level sustainability benchmarking and measurement system that's out there right now. And it's really intended to be used right now as a learning tool internally for companies to be able to identify where they can make improvements in the supply chain of their products. I think ultimately, many of the brands that are involved in this effort would love to see some sort of consumer-facing label put around this index structure, this Higg Index structure. That's still quite a ways off, but for now it's really being used to drive learning and improvement internally within all these different companies, both within the outdoor industry as well as within the broader Sustainable Apparel Coalition, which includes companies like Gap and H&M and Target and Levi's and some other more fashion-focused brands. So it's really a group that represents about 30% of the global supply chain of apparel and footwear. and equipment. It will be as well once the equipment piece gets launched. But really a significant portion of the global supply chain is going to be using this HIG index to look at the sustainability of their product. And it's something that was originally, the framework was originally developed by the Outdoor Industry Association's Sustainability Working Group membership. So it's really one demonstration of the leadership that the outdoor industry companies have been providing in sustainability for quite some time. So I think that's all the slides I have. If you want to move on to the last one, please. I think I just have my contact information. Yep, so I'm happy to answer any other questions. I know we're running a bit over here. Want to allow some time for questions, but if you would like to follow up with me afterward, please feel free.
Thank you very much, Beth. Okay, we are on the home stretch. We heard from our ski areas. We heard from our suppliers, a fabulous model for working together from Beth and OIA, and wanted to finish up with some discussion in our remaining time. We do have a couple of questions that came in, and the first one we have to laugh is why we love working so much in the ski and tourism industry. There's a ski area who wants to know if that picture of the surfer that Jeff presented is him.
No, I wish. That's our preeminent global surf athlete, Kelly Slater.
And so I guess in fairness,
it could be, Jeff. Come on.
Not going to lie. I don't even surf that direction. I surf the other direction.
That's funny.
No.
That's funny. But again, that's why we love this industry so much. Okay, so there are a couple of questions if we could quickly touch on these in the remaining time. Beth, in your presentation, a couple of times you alluded to pre-competitive, and I think if you could answer this question in more of the advice-giving form, let's say to Geraldine, your counterpart in the Ski Areas Association, if you're trying to assemble a group to work together, how do you navigate that pre-competitive place? And even maybe, Doug, you might chime in. You gave a great example from Patagonia, how you influenced and how it was a proud moment to influence a retailer like Walmart. And yet, where does it get touchy when you're influencing your competitors in a positive direction? And kind of a second component to that, Beth, we also observed that your list of logos are product manufacturers, but then also some of their suppliers, let's say like Native Energy or the indigenous group that might be providing services to those product manufacturers. Can you kind of hit those 2 points around pre-competitive and sort of that mix of product manufacturers and their suppliers with an eye to, if you were to advise ski areas, how they might organize around greening their supply chain?
Yeah, well, I'll do my best. I think, the outdoor industry has really been able to pioneer this collaborative model, I think, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think you have the leaders in the industry, and again, Quicksilver and Patagonia, I'd consider two of those, who really get the concept of the fact that sustainability cannot be a competitive advantage. It needs to be a requirement for doing business in this day and age. Now, within within the basic sustainability considerations, I think you can certainly identify areas where you can compete on a specific product or that type of thing. And that's the beauty of the index, actually, is that it provides that framework for here are the things that everybody should be looking at. This shouldn't be a competitive advantage to say that you're looking at these considerations. Everybody needs to be doing this. It's beyond sustainability. It's smart business practices and protecting setting your company up for success in the future, frankly, given resource constraints and all these other macro level considerations. So one piece of success is that we have companies in our industry who get it. And the other piece of that I would have to say is I think in the outdoor industry, it's a pretty easy connection to make between the health of the environment and the success of the industry. Clearly, if we don't take these actions to ensure that our companies are producing things in the most responsible way possible, we're not going to have an industry anymore because we're not going to have outdoor places for folks to play. So that connection is probably a little bit easier. That link is easier to make than perhaps with some other industries. But that's why we really feel like the outdoor aerospace and ski and snow and bike and all the other sectors that fall within that, can really be a leader in this area, because we do have folks that really get those two messages and internalize that and really have it being driven from the top down within the organization. So hopefully that helps answer that question a bit. The other piece of advice I would say is that if we, our idea within the Outdoor Industry Association is that, there's so many groups out there trying to do, the right thing and trying to collaborate. And the more that we can converge a lot of what's happening and get folks using the same frameworks and language and not have it, there's enough work to go around, I think, in terms of sustainability. So the more that we can collaborate even within different sectors or organizations or that type of thing, we're very supportive of that at OIA and not having sort of parallel efforts toward the same ultimate result happening. Now, that said, ski areas have different areas of impact that are going to be important to you versus, brands like Quicksilver or Patagonia. But many of the things, particularly if you look at like our facilities module of the index, that's looking at a lot of the same considerations, the operational considerations, I think, that you all at ski areas would be looking at. So just some food for thought. You might be able to leverage one another's work in these areas and work together a bit more closely. And then just to your point about getting other service providers or other stakeholders involved in the effort, I think we welcome, we recognize the need to have a wide variety of stakeholders engaged in the process, because that's really what's going to make the work credible, as if it's built by brands and retailers and suppliers and service providers and all the other folks that are going to actually be part of implementing the solutions, versus having some third party or even OIA come in and say, here's what you should be adopting. Really making sure that it's developed by all the parties who are going to need to be using it and implementing it. So we have an open membership model for that very reason. I don't know if that answers your second question.
It does, yeah. Thank you. Well, we are out of time, but I thought what we would do in our closing moments, we do have some next steps that we wanted to talk about, and then I also wanted to give each panelist an opportunity to chime in on that, and I'll maybe highlight a couple of other kind of threads coming through on the questions from the audience. In terms of next steps, we will have a feedback questionnaire coming your way by email on Monday. We will also be providing access to today's materials with a web link that we'll be providing at some point. We may not have it available on Monday if the video isn't, the audio and video isn't ready. And if there's any questions about continued collaboration, we would love to hear from you. And I know some of the other speakers have their contact information. We will add that to the materials. Would love to hear from you. So with that, in closing, I wanted just to, building off Beth's comment around kind of pre-competitive and sustainability almost being a shared responsibility where competition isn't as fierce. Just want to see if Jeff or Doug want to chime in on that, and likewise the ski areas, how you see that. Any kind of closing thoughts on that topic, or we've also had some questions about, well, how do you, Ross had made the comment that it takes a lot of diplomacy and cajoling, which love that language, and that really you have to align your philosophies with your suppliers. So any comment that people might want to just chime in on any specific with that. So those are some of the themes we're seeing on questions, and maybe we'll kind of go in reverse order from speaking since Beth just went. Jeff, do you have any parting thoughts for our audience based on those questions coming in?
Just I'll make it real quick here. One on the pre-competitive thing is we found it really easy, and is that we're constantly reminded on our calls about the the antitrust. So there's a whole slew of things that when you come into the collaborative process with sustainability working groups from an antitrust standpoint that you sign on to, and those are made abundantly clear each time we talk. So it's pretty it's pretty guided that way. The other thing is, just in closing, kind of circling back a little bit more specifically, a hot topic now in our supply chain, but I think probably it will grow as well, is the chemicals topic. And so I would encourage people in looking at their suppliers to become educated about about chemicals and restricted chemistries, federal and state legislation on restricted chemistries that affect products that you're buying, and also make sure that one of the questions that you begin asking suppliers is about, do they have insight into the chemistries associated with the products that they're selling you? And I think Anita had that as part of her probably her 30-question scorecard there. So
great.
Great
advice.
That's it. Yep.
Great. Thanks for that advice. Doug, would you want to add any advice or parting thoughts for the audience?
Just that industry collaboration on any of these issues is just so important. I think, for us, the OIA has been a great conduit to address everything from the PFOA example to non-force fed or live plucked down. I think, tying in with Jeff's, work and comments on chemicals in our wetsuit business, we're working really hard with the supply chain, and we're reaching out to competitors to address the safe use of chemicals in the factory. So every time we collaborate with our competitors, it pays off, and I think dropping the fear around that it would really serve anyone with this problem well.
Awesome, thank you. Ross, how about shifting then to the ski area perspective? Any reactions to the questions or parting thoughts for the group?
Yeah, thanks. Just real quick, I think my parting advice maybe to other resorts of one to try to just start tackling this in a manageable way. Just, start small, grow a few pilot projects, seek buy-in from your suppliers when possible, and certainly from staff and from the public. I found a great deal of support just networking with others who are tackling the same things, finding them through industry connections or through these conferences, and staying optimistic. There really is change going on here, and it's great to be part of these kinds of discussions where you get reminded that there are people making a difference. And maybe just to touch on finally that the piece about the diplomacy and cajoling, that really is a big part of what I do. And I think if you come to the table, open and honest and sincere, and if you acknowledge that there are plenty of things that your business hasn't done right in the past. I get a lot of good feedback from our guests because the materials I write and distribute, we acknowledge that we've been there for 75 years and there's plenty of things that we wish we could undo and we can't. So going forward, we're trying to do the very best we can while staying in business. And acknowledging where you have weaknesses, I think, really opens up the discussion more widely.
Good point. It seems that the intersection of sustainability and ski and tourism breeds optimism, it seems, from our work in that space. So thank you. Anita, would you like to build on that?
I think I would just echo it's not a race, it's a journey. And, you don't have to tackle it all at the same time. Start with some small projects, build momentum, and there's so much opportunity that it'll just grow organically in your organization.
Awesome. Thanks. And Geraldine, I know we lost you, and then we got you back, then we lost you. Do we have you back yet?
I'm here, but I don't think you can hear me.
Oh, no, we can hear you.
Oh, awesome.
Yay.
It told me I was just an attendee without sound. So anyway, I just want to thank everybody. I think this has been a really exciting conversation. I've learned a lot, and we would love to keep it going in the future. So I would just encourage everyone to stay tuned and keep on sharing information.
Great. Thank you very much, Geraldine. I'm glad you can make it back with us. And then I would just build on that and say, in closing, to thank everybody for attending. It's been great to see our numbers stay high all the way to the end here, even though we got a bit of a late start and therefore a little bit of a late finish. And I would just say that our panelists today really are exemplifying that spirit of collaboration. They gave generously of their time and of their knowledge, and want to close by thanking each and every one of our panelists for that generosity, and look forward to hearing from you as we get the questionnaire out and continuing the dialogue. And best wishes to everybody in the coming season, and we will continue to move forward on the journey, as Anita says. Thank you very much.